Hey guys, welcome back. I wanted to run through some of the initial results that we're getting here from Super Tuesday. We're getting later on into the evening past 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and actually a lot of these states have already been called. If you want to take a look at this particular map and data for yourself, it's from Decision Desk Headquarters, a tremendous resource in terms of getting election data. I'll link this right at the top of the video description, but there's no other way around this. Joe Biden having an extremely strong Super Tuesday showing, and it's just insane how much this race has changed over the course of the past handful of days. If we take a look back to last week before heading into the South Carolina primary, the average of the national polls had Bernie as the clear frontrunner, typically ahead by around 10 or so percentage points in those national polls. But then Joe Biden outperformed South Carolina. He was able to bring in a slew of endorsements following that very strong South Carolina result. And people who were making their decision kind of over the past couple of days overwhelmingly decided to go for the former vice president, allowing him to run better in states that he was expected to win, and then also coming through and picking up states that he wasn't expected to win. So when I was talking about this the other day in a hypothetical Bernie Sanders versus Joe Biden matchup, I said that Bernie was likely to have his most success out here in the West, which is showing to be the case. Sanders picking up the states of Colorado as well as Utah up to this point. You can see how the numbers are playing out in those instances. But I also said another area where Sanders was likely to have success was up here in the Northeast. But Joe Biden going on and winning Massachusetts, a big surprise there. And then also things are extremely close in the state of Maine. Biden might be able to pick this one up as well. We'll see how things close out, but still too close to call at this point in time. And then even Bernie Sanders, he wins Vermont, and obviously by a pretty considerable margin, but if you would have told me that Joe Biden was going to win by a larger margin or get to a higher percentage anyways at 53% in Virginia than what Bernie Sanders was going to get in Vermont, I would have said that you're crazy, but that is the world that we are currently living in, where Biden is having a tremendous amount of success here on Super Tuesday. And really, Virginia got things opened up on Super Tuesday. They had their polls close at 7 o'clock. They reported their numbers extremely quickly. Tip of the cap there, certainly to the state of Virginia. Very appreciative for them having their numbers come in at a quick pace. But that was a shock, to say the least, that Biden was able to win the state by such a convincing margin. And then another surprise was the state of Minnesota. The Klobuchar endorsement probably has a bit to do with this, but out of all of these Midwestern states, the state of Minnesota is the one that's a bit more progressive leaning in general. Also, Bernie had quite a bit of success in the state of Minnesota back in 2016, but he's coming up short in this instance as well. And if you would have told me before Super Tuesday that Biden was going to go on and win Massachusetts as well as Minnesota, then I would have told you that Bernie wasn't going to have much in the way of overwhelming success by any means on across all of those results. So we'll see how the rest of these areas play out. But just to run through the rest of the states that I haven't touched on yet, North Carolina going to Joe Biden by a pretty significant margin. He's almost up by around 20%. Tennessee, another situation where he's up by nearly around 20 percentage points. He was expected to clean up in the state of Alabama, and that is definitely the case. Even more dominating of a victory there, it appears like Joe Biden's going to have than even what he had in South Carolina. Arkansas, he's up by around 15%. Oklahoma, this is another one that kind of surprised me because Bernie Sanders actually did quite well for himself in Oklahoma back in 2016, but things have changed this time around where he loses to Biden right now, down by about 13 percentage points. Now, it's still not completely over. Biden has taken the mantle as the clear frontrunner at this point in time. It's going to be very difficult for Bernie to try to claw his way back in this thing. But if he's able to retain a victory in Texas and also do well out in California, then maybe there's a scenario where Biden in the coming weeks has some gaffes that hurt him. Now he has the front runner status. There's going to be a more critical eye pointed to him that he hasn't had that spotlight on him over the past few weeks that Bernie has had as that front runner. And then the only other thing that could possibly really propel Bernie forward is if Elizabeth Warren dropped out and endorsed him. I'm skeptical that that would happen, though, especially with Bernie not having quite as much success here on Super Tuesday as many thought he was going to have. Elizabeth Warren, I could see her stepping out because there's really no clear pathway forward for her at this point. She's not going to win any state in this process. There's no pathway forward for her to win the nomination. So if she does step out, I actually don't even think she goes on and endorses Bernie Sanders because maybe she doesn't think he has a legitimate shot at winning the nomination anymore. Maybe she just sits on the sideline like she did in 2016, where you had Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders and Warren didn't endorse until we knew that Clinton was going to go on and be the presumptive nominee, that's when Warren decided to go in and endorse her. We could see a similar type of scenario play out for Warren in 2020, just kind of sitting on the sidelines, seeing what happens between a Biden and Sanders head-to-head matchup. So that's all of the results that we have thus far. When we get full results from these states, probably sometime tomorrow, going to be coming back, going over my predictions, as well as divvying up the pledged delegates that the candidates are going to receive out of these states. I hope to see you guys back for those future videos, and consider subscribing if you have not already done so.